Hey, so today I'm going to talk about something a little bit different. I'm not going to talk about a chocolate maker, but I'm going to talk a little bit about how to taste fine chocolate and a tiny bit about the science behind tasting. So, the science behind tasting is very complicated, to say the least. So many things involved in tasting, from genetics, to your background, to your culture, to medications that you're taking, to your age, to your experiences, whether you're a smoker, whether you eat out at restaurants a lot. If you do, then you have a high salt tolerance. If you eat a lot of processed foods, then you have an even higher salt tolerance. So there's a lot of things that go into your perception of taste, which is different for almost everyone, with a few fundamentals in there. So some examples of experiences. So where you grew up, what you grew up eating depends on it. It helps factor into what flavors you're used to detecting, or what flavors you're used to that you have made a connection with in your brain. Some interesting ones like Marmite or natto. I love lots of things about Japan. I'm sorry, I can't get on board with natto. Natto is it's a Japanese comfort food. It's fermented soybean goo, and it's a comfort food for many Japanese people. And they love it, and it just gives them that feeling, and there's a lot of memories associated with it. But when I eat it, because I'm culturally different, I've had different normative experiences, I just am not a fan of natto. So that's one of the ways that it's different. One of the other ways that we all differ is genetics. So when I was teaching classes in university, we would do this experiment in class because no one would believe me when I just told them. There's this stuff called PTC paper, or prop paper, depending on which chemical you're testing. But it's basically a test for bitterness. And you get this little tiny piece of paper, and it's saturated with a chemical, and you put it on your tongue, and you can either taste it and it's bitter or super bitter, or it tastes like nothing at all. There's no shades of gray. It's either you can taste this or you can't. And so that contributes to how people perceive bitter, and that's genetics. There's nothing you can do about that. You can't learn to taste prop or PTC or learn to taste that bitter chemical. It's just either there or not. And about 50% of people are what we would categorize as average tasters, as defined by the amount of the density of taste buds on your tongue. 25% would be categorized as super tasters, and 25% would be categorized as tolerant tasters. So people have this spectrum of taste based on their biology. Sometimes male and female factors into it. There are more female super tasters than male tasters. Age can factor into it. But here's one thing, and this is like the movie Ratatouille, where he says everyone can cook, everyone can learn how to taste, and you can learn the process, and you can train your palate to become more sensitive. So that's what I want to do a little bit today. So. And this isn't a definitive science. We're still learning about this. I just got a paper that was published in January 2020 that's talking about the taste cells involved in bitter and umami flavor. So we're still learning about this on the biological level and psychological level too. So there's a lot that goes into it. So you know that map that you've seen of the tongue where you have sweet at the front and bitter and sour? entirely wrong, disregard, not true, was created by someone who knew nothing about what they were talking about and then perpetuated in elementary schools and junior highs and high schools. So we do have basic tastes, but each individual taste bud grouping can taste all of those tastes. So it's not mapped out separately on your tongue. So we have taste for salt, acid, sweet, fat, bitter, and umami. These tastes originate on your tongue, and they're basically chemical receptors. So you have cells that recognize chemicals as they come into your mouth, and they send a signal to your brain. That's basic taste. Now, taste is more than just what you detect with your tongue. Taste, flavor is taste plus texture plus pain perception, and what falls into that would be spicy or cool, like mint, and aroma, like volatile compounds that you smell. So flavor involves all of those things. So with taste, we have 6 things that we can perceive. With smell, there was a science article in the journal Science in 2014 that said we can sense over 1 trillion olfactory stimuli. That's more than your eyes, that's more than your ears. Your nose is the king of the senses. And so we do that in two separate ways. So the one is just by smelling something, holding it up to your nose. This is called orthonasal olfaction. And then there's another one, because your nose is connected to your mouth. When you're eating something and you breathe in and the air goes up into your nose, that's called retronasal olfaction. So you smell in your mouth, basically. So you already intuitively know that taste is affected by smell. If you've ever been sick, you know that your sense of taste is dulled when you're sick. If you've ever, when you were a kid and your mom made you eat Brussels sprouts and they were horrible, and you plugged your nose to get it down, you plugged your nose because you didn't want to taste them. So that's what goes, some of the things that go into tasting. So we're going to use all 5 of our senses today to taste chocolate and to explore the flavors and compounds and aromas that are in chocolate itself. There are some people who are very particular about how and when they taste chocolate. Some people say when you wake up in the morning is the best time to taste because your palate is rested and clean. It's when it's best for you. You know your body, you know when you're going to taste things. There are times when you should not taste, like after brushing your teeth, or after a big meal, or after drinking coffee, tea, or fizzy drinks, or spicy foods, or smoking. Smoking is a bad one. It really dulls your taste as well. So we're going to use all 5 senses to learn how to taste chocolate and to get all those aromas. So let's flip the camera around and I'll show you some of the things that I have here today and how we're going to evaluate a fine chocolate. All right, so I've got a couple of samples of chocolate that I pulled out that I'm hoping you won't be able to recognize by the molds. And I've got my tasting sheet because as a taster, I like to write myself notes so that I can remember, because sometimes chocolate changes as it ages and it can have different flavors. So that's why I like to keep notes on a tasting sheet. We're going to start by just telling you a little bit about the environment I'm in. I'm not in the central room in my house. There's not a party going on behind me. I don't have cream on my hands that smells like perfume. I'm not wearing any perfume. I'm trying to remove other sensory information that may crowd out what I'm tasting. Now, I know it's fun to have tasting parties, and I do those too, but you get more when you're able to focus more. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at our chocolates. So I've got 3 chocolates here. This is a 68%, this is 100%, and this is a 70% with an inclusion. And then I have this one here. which we're going to talk about when we look. So when we look at the chocolate, let's just pick one from the middle. We want to look at it and we want to see a nice shine to the chocolate. We want to see even color. Now this one is not quite even because it has an inclusion, but if we were to look at this one, we could see that it has a shine and an even color to it. That indicates that it has good tempering. Now here's an example where a bar has fallen out of temper. And I'll hold it up close and see if we can get the camera to focus on it. So this, what's happening here is called a bloom. There's two kinds of bloom, a fat bloom and a sugar bloom. Both of them mean that it's fallen out of temperature either because of humidity, either because of humidity or temperature. So you can see on this one, it's kind of got this pebbly appearance to it and this gray discoloration on the outside. Now this is not mold. This does not make the chocolate poisonous. It just, the crystallization has changed in the chocolate. And you can still use this, and I often use bloom chocolate. So here's another bloom chocolate where it might look fine on the outside, but then you look at the side, you can see that it looks all granular, and on the back it's got the blooming. So you can use this to melt. You can cook with this. You can melt it and retemper it. It's not poisonous. It's just fine to eat. It just means temperature has changed, or humidity has changed, or it's been sitting on your shelf for too long. So we want to have a chocolate that looks nice. Look is important. We want to have a chocolate that feels nice. We don't want a chocolate that's sticky. We don't want a chocolate that's rubbery. So some commercial chocolate bars that you may get, they actually bend. It's kind of a weird thing to me. So we're using touch there. Then we want to use our ears. We want to hear, and if you've watched my videos, you know we always check for a good snap. So let's see if we can hear a snap on this one. Did you hear that? That was a really nice snap. And that's because this is 100% cacao bar. So we've got a nice snap on this one. And you can see the difference between a nice fine-grained, well-tempered bar and this out-of-temper bar. So far we've done our eyes, we've done our hands, we've done our ears. Now we're going to do smell. So I'm going to flip the camera around and I'll show you how. So for smell, if you want to get really crazy with it, the fun thing about cocoa butter is that cocoa butter has a melting point near body temperature, which means that's why it gives us such a pleasurable mouthfeel when we eat it. And it means when I rub my thumb on it to just warm it up a little bit, it will release volatile compounds that are in the cocoa. And so when I warm this up, I want to smell. And what I do is I'll often cup my hands and see what I can smell from that. And you want to take not a really big, deep breath. You want to take a bunch of little small breaths in a row. You can't do it too many times in a row without taking a break because you'll get overwhelmed. But just a bunch of little tiny. And this is why you don't want to have hand cream on or perfume, because you're putting it right next to your nose and it could interfere with your smells. So that's the aromas. And sometimes, depending on the bar, you can get all kinds of aromas, or you can get one or two. Depends on what the chocolate maker has done. So then, after we've done smell, now we're going to do taste. So there are different ways to get flavors out of chocolate. So the most common way is to put a piece on your tongue and let it, okay, I'm going to talk with food in my mouth, I apologize. Okay, so you want to put it on your tongue and move it around and push it up kind of to the roof of your mouth and move it around your mouth. And as you're doing that, it's really hard to talk on this. As you're doing that, you want to pay attention to the flavors that are coming out, because they may come intensely, they may come very subtly. There may be a journey that you go on. You may get a flavor in the beginning and then halfway through get a new flavor. And then at the end, you finish with something else. It may change. Flavors may interact. You can take advantage of your retronasal olfaction by taking in a breath while you're sucking. So you slowly want to melt the chocolate in your mouth. No, there are other ways that you can eat chocolate that you can detect. And oftentimes I'll have to do this 2-3 times a couple days in a row to get all the flavors out of a bar, to tell all the flavors. There are other ways of doing this. If you chew something, the flavors come out as you boom, really fast, big burst of flavor, and gone fast. That's another way to get the intense flavors right away. You can also taste it melted, but I find it hard to do melted because it's really fast. You get the flavors, but they come at you quite quickly. And if you miss them, then you got to go again and again and again. So because you don't have that cocoa butter melt slowing things down for you a little bit, all the flavors, you can get the flavor journey really fast. Now you also want to pay attention to whether a chocolate is bitter, or whether it is acidic, or whether it is astringent. And sometimes those flavors can be in different places in your mouth. So it can be in the front or in the back of your throat. Oftentimes you'll get an astringency in the back of your throat with a finish. And the last thing is that when the chocolate is all gone from your mouth, there's still, in flavorful chocolate, there's still going to be a flavor there, and that's called a finish. And you want to pay attention to that too, because a nice finish leaves you with a nice flavor perception. If it leaves this nasty taste in your mouth, that's what you're going to remember. It can take you on the most amazing journey, but if you have this bitter astringent flavor at the end, then it's going to be gross. So that is how you taste chocolate. And one of the hardest parts of tasting chocolate, believe it or not, is matching a word in your head to what's happening in your mouth. And because of that, it sounds like it would be easy, but it's not. It's quite hard because you don't have a lot of the visual cues. For example, if there's cherry notes in a chocolate, you don't have a cherry, a red in front of you to give you those visual cues so that your brain can pull that out of the file. That's why some people use flavor wheels. So you have all kinds of different flavor wheels that this one has off flavors and aromas in it. Here's another one. This one's from Chocolopolis. It's a pretty complex flavor wheel. What else do I have? This one's from Reed Cacao. This one, they actually have different wheels for mouthfeel and appearance. And this is taste and aroma. You've got the one from the International Institute of Chocolate and Cacao Tasting. This is actually an interactive one if you get online with this one. The only one that I can find with a spider, what's called a spider map, is one of my Meiji bars. So this would be bitter, sweet, salty, floral, and it's kind of arbitrary. That's the thing about taste, guys. Your strong may not be strong to me. Your floral may be something different to you. So it's very, very subjective, which is why when I do a tasting, I'm like, you can't be wrong, man. Well, you can be wrong. Like if you're going to tell me something really whack out in left field, I may gently point out to you that you're wrong. But there are really no wrong answers when you're tasting something. You just gotta do it and get in there, and this is a very pompous term, but refine your palate and just practice and put a word to what's happening in your mouth. And that's just practice, taste, explore flavors, explore foods that you know. Taste a lemon, a lime, and an orange so that you can be able to tell the difference if you taste them. So it's actually a really exciting field for me in science. I have a few books to show you that I like that I've read that I would recommend. This one, what you're missing. This is taste what you're missing. Neural gastronomy. That was a little sciencey. And these are not all just about chocolate. They're tasting foods in general. This one is really good. This is more of a general. Everybody could read this book. It's easy to read. And then this one is actually quite good too. And this involves not just tasting chocolate, but other things as well. So that's how you taste chocolate. It's not hard. Go home and practice. That's not hard homework, right? Go home and eat chocolate. And I'll see you next Thursday when we have the next video. Thanks for watching.